Welcome, Earthlings, to my Urmah Basics 101 course. My name is Theric, I'm an Urmah, and today we will be discussing Urmah Technology.
Didn't we already discuss AI?
Yes. To clarify, this lecture is about Urmah Technology besides AI, as that is covered in the third lecture of this course. One of the key features that make Urmah society mature and different from your own is our energy is free and abundant. Our scientists have found a way to capture ambient energy from the universe. I'm no engineer, but if I remember my science lessons correctly, it involved quantum foam kept in a vacuum, acting as both a heat reservoir and a cold reservoir, using entropy exchange to power a thermoelectric engine.
Huh?
To say it more simply, imagine that your local star is a giant juice box, and we have a really long straw which can slurp heat from it and deposit it in your home. And cold reservoir is another long straw, out which is connected to deep space. You put the hot and the cold side by side, and the temperature difference is what drives the engine that generates the power. I say the energy is free, but that's a bit of an untruth. There is no such thing as free energy. We just have fancy technology that lets us move and use energy almost perfectly at any distance.
So can this be done on Earth?
Sure, for example, you could put a couple energy-capturing devices on your planet Mercury and then use quantum energy teleportation to transmit the energy to Earth. Your Earth scientists have already proven they know how to do this in experiments. I'll put a video link up here and in the description for this video. You could power all your houses and cities with devices on Mercury. You don't need a whole Dyson sphere. You could even power your cities with the heat from the core of your planet if you don't want to send something to space. When you finally figure out quantum energy teleportation, it will be a game changer.
Awesome. I do have a question about quantum computing, though.
I'll try to answer it. What is it?
My dad says quantum computing requires really low temperatures, and so lots of AI with quantum core isn't possible. How do the Urmah do it?
Good question. That's one of the reasons why a lot of droid collectives have their homes in deep space. However, we do not really use cryogenic temperatures even on our planets. We shield the qubits using a type of manufactured diamond that has a crystalline structure which can protect the qubits from the surrounding noise.
I see. I'll be sure to tell my dad. Thank you, Mr. Theric.
You're welcome. Anyway, this energy technology for Urmah comes in boxes which you can purchase and have shipped to your home. The larger the box, the more energy which flows into your system. This happens at a constant rate given the size of the heat engine you bought. It's not great for sudden demand spikes in the system, which is why we have capacitors to handle sudden increases in demand. If the capacitors are full, then excess energy is pumped to ground, where it sinks harmlessly into the planet. These systems are very safe and have been used over many generations, though I remember my parents insisting that I stay out of the power room when I was a cub.
So the power room is a little dangerous?
I guess. But I think they mainly wanted to keep me out of the vents so that I wouldn't get chopped up by fans for the air conditioning unit, which was kept in the same area. Anyway, we also don't use wires to power or charge most devices. Instead, we capture the excess energy in coils and have resonant receivers throughout our buildings. We use this to power small devices ambiently. Large devices will still have to be plugged into a wall and fed directly from the capacitor bank. However, there is enough energy in the ground around an Urmah home that you could stick a light bulb in the ground, and it would probably light up. And it's no more dangerous than operating a shortwave radio. Interesting, huh?
It is very interesting. It sounds like Tesla, but what about pyramids? I heard pyramids were power generators.
Yes. I do remember seeing pyramids in the capital city of Avion. I know pyramids provide better shielding from noise. The pyramids there were kind of like recyclers or sinks of all the ambient energy that other generators would provide. It could power hundreds of homes by doing that. With the tech you currently have on Earth, and using Earth's natural electromagnetic field, a pyramid the size of the ones in Egypt could power about 3 of your modern homes. I'll put details on how to do it in the description.
What would we need to have to power more homes?
You would need room temperature superconductors, lossless resonators, hyperbolic metamaterials, room temp MIM diodes, carbon nanospike arrays, dielectric supercaps with compact inductive stores. Now if you use a laser or UV-induced ion channel to create a controlled St. Elmo's fire above the pyramid, then the current increases by 5 to 10 times. So, with the advanced materials and stimulating an ion channel above the pyramid, you're now powering hundreds of homes.
Ah, okay.
Fabrication technology should be familiar to you, Earthlings. You have machines that can print parts made out of plastic and metal. The only difference here is that our fabricators work on the molecular level, assembling almost perfect replicas atom by atom.
Like in Star Trek?
Yes, like in Star Trek. Speaking of Star Trek, did you know that Lucille Ball, the main actress of the show I Love Lucy, was one of the funders of the pilot episodes of the Star Trek original series? In a previous life, she was also a famous Tigran Urmah. She was known throughout Urmah space for her Edda performances.
Really, that's cool.
I thought so. Back to fabricators. We typically only use this technology for printing inorganic objects, as it's simpler to bond crystalline or metallic things than it is complex biochemical chains. We use vats for that. Fabricators come in many sizes and take up a large amount of power to use. However, when you can capture energy from a star, many things become possible. Servant AI doesn't just make our food and clean our homes. It also pilots communally owned vehicles, which all Urmah use for transit. The Droid Collective provides this service much like how your societies have ride-sharing services, but with a wider range of vehicles available. It's very rare for people to own your own vehicles because public transit is free and efficient. There are ground vehicles, aerial vehicles, and even interplanetary hops are available at your local spaceport. For an Urmah, traveling between planets within the same solar system is like flying to another country would be for you, with many of the same customs controls you would expect. I'll be honest, I really don't know how interstellar engines work. My life mate Naira and my sons Kieran and Maum do, but at the moment they are unreachable, so we'll have to go with what I can remember.
Your sons made an engine manufacturing company, right?
Yes, that's right. But I wasn't involved much. I remember our main customer was the Khazar, who would build ships with our engines. But I really don't know how engines work. I do, however, distinctly remember the sensation of warp. It's almost as if you are standing beside yourself. You have a strange sense of vertigo, and your senses feel off. It's as if everything around you is out of phase, including yourself. Some people have described it as a feeling of eternally falling while firmly seated. The first time I went into warp, it frightened me. Not a lot of things frightened me back then, but warp travel did. I thought my soul was going to rip free from my body. There wasn't any logic to that fear. I knew people did it every day. However, for a cat who was used to having absolute control over his body, being in warp left me feeling powerless and aware of how small I was in a way I had never felt before. If something had gone wrong, my body would have been shredded to atoms. It's a very humbling experience. As far as the technology goes, you already know that we have endless energy. However, the flow of that energy into the ship comes at a steady pace that's too slow to power warp engines. We had very large ship capacitors which powered all the large systems, from weapons to shields to warp engines, life support. You get it. If you warped to another location that was far away, You would need to let the capacitor bank charge before doing so again. If your captain wasn't careful, then your ship could become vulnerable, or even have life support go down temporarily. And if that happens, you are having a very bad day.
How long does it take to travel between solar systems?
Well, it depends on what engines you have and how far away the solar system is. But for the advanced engines we used, it only took about half an hour or so. But some slower craft can take a few days.
That's not very long. How common is interstellar travel?
It's common. There are certain types of humans who love trading between planets, such as the Weeksiul. In fact, the majority of the people who live in the capital cities on Evion and Zygomant are people who are living there temporarily. One of the most important facts you need to understand about how Urmah live is that there are around 60 million of us spread across several planets. Or at least that is how it is in the timeline I am from.
What do you mean by a different timeline?
I suppose I should try and explain timelines to you. Not many people know this, but Earth is in a unique time bubble where multiple timelines of the galaxy are converging at one time on your planet. Humans on your planet can have past life regressions and get different information on Urmah, depending on what timeline they are from. For example, there are a number of timelines where Avion in Lyra was blown up by regressive Alpha Draconi.
That's horrible.
I think so, too. I love my home planet. I really don't want to be aligned with that timeline. If you see on your internet, or even in book pages that discuss Urmah based primarily from Sirius, then those authors are probably influenced by those timelines. I'm not saying they are wrong, but I prefer my timeline. There are Tegatons in orbit above Earth right now that have spoken about Urmah at length, and Queen Mariswa has even interviewed them, but that is slightly different from the timeline that I come from. For example, one of the sports that Arisha mentioned in his interview with Queen Mariswa was the apparently popular sport, Forshag, that involves 12 Urmah competing for a representation of a dead animal. This sport was banned when I was a child in my timeline, because the thought of Urmah ripping apart corpses with their claws and teeth made the other races on Avion uncomfortable. The Urmah King Ruhr in my timeline is on planet Avion, and he just has a ship above Earth in high orbit that is studying Earth. Mari in my timeline never got sick and has a Tegaton craft in high Earth orbit. The higher you go over Earth, the more likely you are to go the timeline that you are a vibrational match to or have karma in.
That's wild.
Yeah, Earth is unique right now. If it seems like things are a bit crazy right now, it's because it is crazy. There is a galactic federation for each timeline, and so Saturn-level governance must deal with the laws from countless galactic federations. That's enough to paralyze decision-making for anyone, even the best of us. Honestly, humans on Earth will probably have a hard time getting clear direction from the galactic community until this time bubble that you've been in for a few thousand years has passed, which it will pass soon, hopefully. If you clear your karma, you humans have a unique opportunity where you can become a vibrational match to any timeline of your choosing. But if the other channelers are right, you only have a few years to clear your karma and choose your past. So I recommend you choose wisely. Clearing karma will probably set you on a higher vibration timeline. So it's a good thing to work on. Try and reconcile with as many people as you can. Even if you can't reach them, forgive them or ask for forgiveness out loud verbally, even if it's to an empty room and with clear intention. There is a lot more to clearing karma, and it's unique to each situation, but I'll let Rokshara go into detail on that some other time.
Is your timeline a high-vibration timeline, Mr. Therak?
Yes. Many galactic federations consider my timeline to be their favorite timeline. I'm not going to say we have everything figured out, but it's certainly less dire than many other timelines. For example, there is hardly any Urmah presence in the timeline where the Urmah home planet of Avion was destroyed. But the Council of Avion is considered one of the wisest and fairest councils in the galaxy in my timeline, not to mention all the people that Urmah help across the quadrant. In the timeline that Queen Marie from the lower Earth orbit is in, there are millions of Panthera Urmah who were exiled in that timeline, and they have been captured and placed into breeding farms by the mechanical bug species I mentioned in my AI video.
Oh, yeah, I remember them. They took over a whole galaxy and invaded parts of this galaxy.
That's right. In a few decades, or maybe 100 years, Queen Marie's timeline is going to face a massive galactic war that could very well wipe out many planets. It is a considerably more dire timeline. That is why the Urmah High King left that timeline and came to my timeline, where my family did something called a grand transmutation and won an enormous astral battle in Panthera space, such that the Panthera are doing all right. That is why my Heaven Blade is the strongest sentinel blade that can shatter other sentinel blades. That is also why the Urmah High King and my family are working on creating the Maran subrace of Urmah that will become frontline soldiers that help to clear the other galactic quadrants from the regressive mechanical bug infestation.
Whoa, cool.
Yes, my soul child, Rokshara, will discuss Marans at length in another video. They are a pretty awesome species. Anyway, this timeline conversation has been quite the tangent away from Urmah Technology.
Can I ask more questions about this later?
Sure, my soul child Rokshara can probably explain it better than I can anyway. I'll let her explain it more later. Now, back to Urmah homesteads. When we became an advanced species and integrated with the droid collective, we had a population crash like many of your nations on Earth. However, because AI supported our aging population, this wasn't a problem. We accepted our population decline with grace and without fear, and the Feline at least are a slightly expanding population now. The Panthera are declining in population at the moment. Raising cubs is hard, especially when you can have 5 in a litter, and many young feline opt to never become pregnant. Ancient cities on our planets have been reclaimed by nature or settled by other species, like humans. The decreased population has allowed every Urmah family to spread out and claim large tracts of land. There are still cities, mainly centered around spaceports, and Panthera tend to prefer living in spread-out towns. Feline prefer living on large, multi-generational homesteads, which we carve out of the wilderness. These homesteads are self-sufficient regarding utilities. Servant AI will dig wells for running water, put in landing pads for aerial ride shares or deliveries. We build our power rooms and central climate control, and we have satellite communications to ensure we're still connected with the rest of society. We are spread out, but still very connected, even with how spread out we are. Emergency services are never more than an hour away. If that seems like it's too long, never fear. A sapient AI doctor is probably already living on your homestead with you, ready to provide first aid. The next technology is one you should be familiar with because of shows like Star Trek and Star Wars. Holographic displays are common in mature interstellar societies. Augmented reality devices and sometimes implants can be used in combination with AI assistance to generate useful information for the user. Augmented reality is used to let cats live history and have interactive entertainment. However, it is more useful for its practical applications. Doctors use holograms for overlaying medical scans onto their patients to help them visualize what's going on. Technicians use holograms to figure out the next step in a repair. Pilots use them to display star maps. And engineers have augmented reality simulators Many people use them to project avatars of their friends and family so that they can share a meal together even from another world. Kids have holographic video games. Like I said, this technology is everywhere. The picture shown here is a therapist using remote presence in the home of his Urmah patient. Although remote presence has become far more advanced-looking than what this image shows.
He looks like Leia bringing a message to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Here, let me show you.
Oh yeah, you're right. Maybe that is what your Earth-based AI was going for when it drew this image of the therapist for me.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, being a therapist is one of the most in-demand jobs in mature interstellar societies. This is because the service is provided for free, and you can have as much or as little therapy as you need. Droid collectives pay people to be counselors because people in general prefer to talk to another person about their problems than to an AI. The AI provide training and the infrastructure for people who want to help others as a therapist, and the Galactic Federation promotes therapy as a way of promoting peace and stability in the galaxy. Even logical species appreciate having someone to talk to in order to bounce ideas off another person. The best therapists, of course, are highly empathic races, such as Tagatans, who are humans from the Pleiadian constellation. Some of them can charge a small fortune for their services as they can see auras, which makes them particularly good therapists. They can even use their empathic abilities over remote presence, although it isn't as good as being there in person. Sometimes having an AI therapist is useful, especially if someone has developed a relationship with a sapient AI that can guide them through simulations to see their reaction to certain situations. They can put on a helmet like the one shown in Sword Art online, and the AI can interact with the brain to make the person feel like they are really there in the simulation.
Really? Oh, I love that concept.
Yes, it's a real and fairly common technology.
How common is having a servant or sapient AI?
Almost everyone has one. It's hard for most people in mature societies to even imagine having to do all the cleaning and chores that Earthlings do. Holograms are also used in martial training. Any training center of note will have cameras that record their athletes. This data is then used to create holographic ghosts of your previous day's performance, which can be critiqued for the athlete to review. AI can also give active feedback on the growth of your body, giving you stats like in a video game. It's fun and addictive to see your stats raising from day to day, but more than that, it's important for safety. If you have a sharp drop in your stats, you know it's time to rest. This early intervention prevents many injuries, and since it was put into practice, sudden deaths from overexertion like heart failure have become practically non-existent. However, the most advanced simulation centers that I used in the Academy on Avion was made by the Kryton. You really felt like you were there at the simulated place. Urmah Medical Technology is to the level that some Earthlings might call it a miracle. We can reattach severed limbs, regrow any organ, and cure nearly every disease.
Regrow organs?
Yes, we have vats that we can grow organs in.
Is that how you get lab-grown meat?
Kind of. Most of our meat is grown from fast-growing cells in vats. We don't grow organs for food. For emergencies, we have foam, which you can spray on a wound, and it will stop the bleeding immediately. We also utilize stem cell technology to flawlessly repair torn ligaments, cartilage, or burned skin.
How often are stem cells used?
Stem cells are a very common treatment. Even something as simple as a poison ivy rash has a stem cell spray that neutralizes the poison and repairs the tissue much faster than any of your rash medications on Earth.
Cool.
Another thing we can do is to reverse our age, enabling the longest-lived of us to extend our existence up to almost 1,000 years. The big caveat is that you need to have money to pull it off.
How long do Urmah live without paying for life extension?
Well, large Urmah like me can only live for about 60 to 70 years if they are in really good shape, or about 50 years if they aren't in good shape. Smaller Urmah can live a decade or so longer. White-furred Urmah can use their astral abilities to keep inflammation away and can live up to around 150 years if they are really careful.
I see.
The first tier of age reduction involves things like caloric restriction, gene therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and a servant AI that acts as your live-in personal trainer, chef, and assistant to make sure you are taking your supplements and aren't indulging in bad habits. In case you're curious what that means, they will pour out your beer and flush your drugs down the toilet. Very helpful, right? These therapies and life habits can about double your lifespan, with a good quality of life, and are affordable by the upper middle class. The upper class gets access to medical pods. Put simply, you walk into the clinic as a hobbling old person, and 3 months later you walk out in the prime of your life, around the age of 20. However, ladies, this does not reverse menopause, so you will remain sterile and get to experience a second youth without the bother of periods. This medical pod technology can only be used 3 times, however. Many white fur leaders will utilize the first 2 tiers. This can bring their bodies to live almost 1,000 years if they are really careful. But many of those leaders have memories of their past lives anyway, so it's not that big of a deal to just reincarnate into a different body, other than continuity of leadership.
When do white furs start remembering their past lives?
It happens around puberty, so about age 10 for white furs, although there are a handful of exceptions that get their memories earlier. We also have nanite technology, which are a Class 1 restricted medication. They can provide lasting protection, but they replace your immune system. These machines are smarter than white blood cells and can cure things like cancer with ease. The downside is that once you start taking these nanomachines, you need to keep getting injections of them or your artificial immune system will collapse. These tiny machines vastly improve recovery. To work, they replace your immune system by attacking and destroying it. From that point on, you need regular injections of nanites to survive, and they can infect others through transmission of bodily fluids, so you are barred from participating in contact sports, and must inform prospective lovers if your condition or risk being put on trial for attempted murder. The last tech we have in this category, for the ultra-rich, are vat-grown bodies. Want to be a different sex or a different species? If you're wealthy enough and willing to go through something questionably close to death, you can make that happen. Anyway, that about concludes the civilian technology used by Urmah. Now, as a soldier, well, an old soldier, pardon me while I go through some of the old military technology I used. This is an image that is kind of close to what my eldest son, Kiran, looked like when he was young. Isn't he handsome?
He looks kind of angry.
Well, maybe this is how I remember him. Naira disagrees. She says he's much more handsome than this.
How does Naira see Kieran?
Let me find a picture. Here he is. Naira says Kiran looks more like this.
He is handsome.
Right? He grew almost as big as me, which is very unusual for a dark-furred Urmah. Anyway, the reason I brought up this picture of Kiran was to talk about disruptor technology. In the picture, Kiran is holding a pulse disruptor while hunting. Disruptor weaponry is named such because it disrupts the nervous system of the target. This results in a near-instant and painless death. Disruptor waves can fire through thin walls and certain surfaces, like body armor. The waves fan out of the weapon in a narrow cone, kind of like a shotgun, becoming less lethal over distance. The lethal distance of a disruptor depends on the model, with rifles having a much longer range of engagement than the pistol shown here. Pulse disruptors became the most popular form of handheld ranged weaponry at the onset of space travel, because it only affects biological targets. In fact, projectile weaponry like you Earthlings use is banned aboard spacecraft, as are weapons like lasers.
So are pulse disruptors like blasters in Star Wars?
They are in the sense that they don't cause damage to the walls. This is important as the walls protect the craft from the vacuum of space. No one wants to hurt the walls of a spacecraft. The one downside to disruptors is that they generate a lot of heat to fire. This downside could be mitigated by advanced cooling systems. But according to Federation law, all disruptor weaponry must be air-cooled. They did this to reduce lethality and reduce mass casualty events. However, as a soldier, I can tell you it's quite frustrating when the cooling fan on your weapon kicks into high gear and signals to your enemy that you are currently helpless. That's why I recommend to always carry 2 sidearms if you're going into combat, or a sentinel sword, of course. Continuing the theme of military technology, we have energy shielding, originally designed to protect ships, stations, and bases exposed to stellar radiation. Our scientists shrunk shielding technology into something an Urmah can wear on their back. It was supposed to be used for protection during extended EVA in hostile environments, but the military adapted the technology for war and tuned the shields to protect against disruptor blasts. One of the original problems with the shields is that they prevented disruptor fire from going out, preventing soldiers from returning fire. We got around this by cycling the shield, having it go down whenever the user fired. However, there is still significant lag time from when the shield goes down to when it comes up again. Another problem is that the shield units and their power supplies are very heavy and needed an exoskeleton to carry, even for a powerful Urmah warrior. Rather than let all these difficulties dissuade us, we leaned into the challenge and created ultra-heavy infantry, known as the Urmah Sentinel Corps. Wearing powered armor suits and wielding giant blades for close combat, the Sentinel Corps are either legendary or infamous, depending on which side of the conflict you happen to be. Look at that armor. Isn't it good looking?
Do Urmah wear gold armor? I thought gold wasn't very strong.
Not for actual combat, no. This picture isn't at all like the real thing, but I liked it anyway, so I put it here. Sentinel armor isn't as pretty as this, but it is more functional. The plates are smoother to deflect blows, and it is painted to blend in with its surroundings. You also can't see the energy shield aside from maybe noticing a faint distortion in the air like you can near hot objects. There is a backpack which houses the power supply for the unit, as well as the shield projector. Gravity manipulators are located on the hip joints, which we use like the jetpacks in your movies and games. The grav belt also helps protect us from impact weaponry, or if we get tossed by a nearby explosion. Once I was able to use the force of an orbital bombardment to launch myself onto an enemy position. The opposing force was very surprised I had survived. So was I. But I recovered faster. I won a medal that day, but only because of luck and the talent of our military engineers. The armor isn't invulnerable, though. In that same battle, my shield had overheated while I was fighting inside a building. I had cornered several cats in the base armory when one came out with a shoulder-mounted anti-armor round, a rocket-propelled sabot launcher. The backblast of the weapon in that tight space killed him and severely wounded his friends, but he managed to put the sabot straight through the knee joint of my armor. My suit immediately filled the gap in my leg with medical foam, injecting me with painkillers and stimulants to keep me conscious. My knee was destroyed, But because the exoskeleton was still functional, I could still walk. Seeing that I was still fighting after taking an anti-tank round, an orbital bombardment, and copious amounts of disruptor fire, the rest of my enemy either ran or surrendered, for which I was very grateful, as I was starting to get a little tired. Ha! Anyway, the armor is good. Sentinel swords are nearly 9 feet long and are wide enough to use as a shield when planted in the ground or held with the side grip. The blade itself typically weighs around 200 pounds, and with power assist from his armor, a sentinel can max out the swing of his blade at around 70 meters per second. To give you an idea what that can do, a full strike from a sentinel in power armor hits with around 450 metric tons of force, which is roughly the same order of kinetic punch as a 122-millimeter artillery shell without the attached explosion. It could rip through an armored wall or a tank easily. The sword can absorb energy blasts from pulse disruptors. We sentinels would practice deflecting blasts for a long time before we could graduate.
Like Jedi Knights?
Yes, like Jedis. Giant Jedis with speeds faster than any human.
Oh, that is so cool.
Huh, I thought so. Anyways, the ancient art of the sentinel sword had been relegated to sport until energy shielding technology became advanced enough to make close quarters fighting relevant again. And given that only the Alpha Draconi can surpass an Urmah in brute strength, the sentinel blade has proven itself in combat many times over in the modern era. The material of the blade has been improved since ancient times, and is one of the toughest materials in our galaxy. It takes a long time to forge a sword, so each one is a priceless treasure. The blade itself is near unbreakable. I personally have seen someone take a round which was designed to destroy armored troop carriers on the flat of their blade, and while they were blasted back and lost their grip on their sword, their weapon wasn't damaged in the slightest, and because of their armor, they managed to survive the direct hit. You should have seen the enemy's faces when my friend got back up and kept fighting. They went from cheering to surrendering. We told the story many times. For us soldiers, it was very amusing. Next, we will cover the helmet. You will likely already be aware of heads-up displays, so I won't go too deeply into this technology, other than to point out that ours have integrated optics, such as heat vision and aim assist. When we use a long-range weapon, a reticle pops up on our heads-up display, showing us where we're aiming. We have mini-maps for situational awareness that have various symbols meaning various things. We go to infantry school to learn what they mean. We also have color coding on our heads-up display that outline the friends, foes, civilians, vehicles, and buildings that are in our field of vision. Overwatch can highlight targets for us, or we can highlight buildings, vehicles, or people by simply pointing and thinking hard that we want that thing to blow up. It's not because we're psychic, but because our helmet has sensors which can read our brain waves. That feature is very helpful for our medics in case we start to go into shock from injuries. We have a comms system and an intelligent audio enhancement system, which dulls loud sounds and enhances sounds we should pay attention to, such as the sound of enemy footfalls or voice chatter. But I think my favorite feature was the threat assessment system. If someone pointed a weapon at you, the helmet's AI would trigger your armor to create a static electric response on your body in the direction of the threat, with varying intensities depending on how likely it thought you were to die from that weapon. Very helpful. Of course, the threat assessment system only worked so long as your Overwatch drones fed it information. Each sentinel had 2 personal drones which followed him around. When you went into battle, you got to choose what types of drones you wanted. You could have attack drones with various weaponry such as disruptors, lasers, or explosives, or you could have stealthy Overwatch drones. Now, There is a prohibition in Federation law preventing the use of AI systems to kill sentient life. There must always be a person in the loop somewhere. You get around this by using the target intent system in your helmet. To kill someone with an automated drone, you point at them, curse at them for shooting at you, and then the drone goes and solves the problem. The bad part about combat drones is that while they're off slaughtering something, they aren't protecting you from enemy drones or giving you information. That means no threat assessment, no mini-map updates, and the combat drones are vulnerable to getting destroyed themselves. I personally prefer having 2 Overwatch drones feeding my helmet information. I might have 1 combat drone to take out snipers and anti-tank that are a threat to me. But ultimately, a well-informed Sentinel warrior is far more deadly than any drone. Each member of the Sentinel Corps easily had 100-to-1 casualty ratio. And I say casualty, meaning injury, because I'm not aware of any Sentinel actually dying in combat, unless they were hit by orbital bombardment or blown up along with their spaceship. But I don't think those count. In any case, don't fight with Urmah. It's a bad idea. There is a reason we are called upon throughout the galaxy to help bring justice to the oppressed. All of this lore we have discussed today is the world that my science fiction book, Guardians of the Blade, takes place in. Honestly, if you want to align yourself with the timeline I'm from, it would help to watch this Urmah Basics lecture series and read this book. The book is a memoir about myself meeting my life mate, Naira, and having cubs with her on a planet-destroying superweapon called the Blade. But it's not really for kids to read. It has some spice in the romance. I hope you liked this 6th lecture in my Urmah 101 course.
That was a very interesting lecture.
Thank you. I don't say this often, but the rest of my group would really appreciate it if you could comment, share, subscribe, and all that. It helps this channel grow a lot, and we really need as much support as we can get. Thanks for coming. See you later, Earthlings. Be strong, and don't forget to live rightly.